overtime to end their season, and JMU is one win away and possibly a Duke win in the ACC Championship game from the college football playoff. Tuesday, the Commanders lose a heartbreaker. We'll talk about that with Lake Lewis, NFL and Commanders insider. So join us on the morning warm-up, weekday morning 7 to 8 a.m. on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 a.m., and on the VTRN Sports app.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
On the one hand, we have Tony Elliott. On the other hand, we have Lane Kiffin. If you're using the college football analogy here, which we're going to do to start the fast lane, if you're recapping the weekend with those two coaches in mind, one is like that little angel on your shoulder. You can guess which one that is. One is like the devil on your shoulder. You can take a wild guess as to who that might be. First of all, how could it not been more different? The way they handled their weekends. Virginia dominates Virginia Tech. 27-7 in a game that honestly, I thought it was going to be a shutout. Outside of the Shamaris Petrikin, Snoop, I think is what he's called. But Petrikin, big play, 57-yard touchdown catch. There was really nothing that Virginia Tech could do against that Virginia defense, especially throwing the football. Up until that point, Kyron Drones completed 3 out of 14 passes. 21% of his passes completed. 20 yards, a quarterback rating of, I'm not making this up, 5.1. It marginally got better because of that cosmetic touchdown. But if that doesn't happen, honestly, it felt like Virginia left points on the board. And if they wanted to, honestly, and maybe I'm off base, TJ, I thought this could have easily been not a 27-7 game, but a 41-0, maybe a 48-0 win if Virginia wanted to really run it up on Virginia Tech.
It absolutely could have, but Tony Elliott threw you were there. Tony Elliott threw the backups in early fourth quarter and just let them go crazy.
Yeah, and it got the arousal of the crowd. They were excited, understandably, for it. But even the way the weekend unfolded at Virginia in the last couple of weeks, and this is not to undermine the severity of the trial where the shooter for Lavelle Davis Jr., Devin Chandler, and Deshaun Perry, the shooter was convicted and sentenced 5 life sentences. But Virginia's dealing with that. Meanwhile, Lane Kiffin on the other side, the other shoulder, if you will, is creating his own soap opera. More on that in a moment, because it has been the topic that's dominated the stories, understandably so. But I couldn't help but be captivated by the difference in approaches for handling success. Not surprised in the least. Based upon what we know about Virginia and who they would hire, yes, to some people, if they were thinking about Virginia, we're going to use an analogy at Fastlane, Ed Lane, and VTR and Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube for those that are watching, but kind of the pinky out when you drink analogy for Virginia. As much as that may be the case, some people might say that's also the case in certain sectors of the Ole Miss fan base in the SEC. But for Virginia, you've got a coach that you brought in and showed what he could do, maybe to a fault, in terms of it went on longer than some people thought was necessary, the recovery from the shooting. But clearly, Tony Elliott has made that his mission to the point where he led off his press conference before ever making a statement about how Virginia dominated the Hokies, about questions that were inevitably going to come. Here's how we open the press conference. Tony Elliott.
I'd like to start with just thanking Delana, Simone, Happy, because it was a long 2 weeks to get here, and we went through a very, very difficult week with the sentencing, and this one's for them, and we're not here without the inspiration that they provide us on a daily basis. So hopefully this brings them some joy as they really kind of now get a chance to embark on their road to healing and recovery.
Tony Elliott. Hopefully the win against Virginia Tech brings the families of Chandler Perry and Davis Jr. some joy. And Mike Hollins is a survivor. It's a great story what he's done with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and using the tragedy to be a testimony of his faith. And again, to get my usher on for just a moment here in the fast lane, being a Christian myself, and TJ is one as well, it does resonate more with us than it may with the people out there that they're not Christians or, not nearly as deep in their faith as we are. Granted, I'm not always a good testimony to that. Ask Coach Kennedy from JF Cavalier Football, presented by TroStall.com. Heck, you could ask TJ, Ty, Trey, and Luke from the morning warm-up, the latter three of them, because they've seen certain examples. But Tony Elliott made the win literally about everything but himself, to the point where he elaborated on what this victory meant for the families of those 3 slain victims from 2022 at UVA.
I think that all of us outside of the families, the Davis family, the Chandler family, and the Perry family, have had an opportunity to kind of, move forward a little bit and grieve and heal. But they haven't. It's been a very, very long 3 years for them. But we believe that we got, kind of some just due, and now we can really embark on the road to recovery. But it's still going to be a long way, and hopefully tonight is just an opportunity for them to just find some joy in the program that their sons were a part of. So we love you, we thank you. We're always here for you, and hopefully going forward they'll be able to come back as often as they would like and be a part of more nights like tonight.
Look, I've been the first to pile on a lot of elements of Virginia athletics, and in particular, Carla Williams, and I think she's not done herself as many favors as she could have by making herself available, not just to us in the media, but when you got luminaries like David Teal, Hall of Fame columnist and multi-time National Sports Writer of the Year from Virginia Sports Writer of the Year, when even he's being critical of the lack of availability, there's merit to it. We can't all be wrong, and Virginia's handling of her availability is right. Like, at some point, there's criticism. But you've got to give her credit as well where it's due, because Virginia, and Tony Elliott's an example of this, they found a way in a lot of cases to embody the idea of playing for something bigger than yourself, while understanding that this is still an era where you got to get with the times. Like, you can't just preach the play for something bigger than yourself, so you shouldn't be compensated idea, because athletes are not going to bite for that. I mean, let's be honest. It's a job to them, much like it is to the coaches. Like, you can't tell a grown-up, hey, this is the case, blah, 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 and then there's no opportunity that's there. Like, you got to have some level of reward for everybody that's in the game and the way it's played. But I think Virginia's done a remarkable job of how to handle that, and it was just an interesting, stark contrast. When Tony Elliott made a dominating victory that could have been even bigger over the arch rival Virginia Tech, not even about himself, but about everything else around him. And there's the senior element to it. There's the forefathers at Virginia. Like this, the fact that what this win meant for Virginia in Tony Elliott's eyes is how awesome it was seeing the seniors rejoice.
It's just confirmation of what's possible. And I think those guys came to Virginia, even with the previous staff, believing that they could have a night like this. And then when the new staff came in, they fought hard to buy in, to believe in what we were telling them our vision was going to be going forward. And then they persevered through all of the adversity. And they're the big reason why this football team is where it is.
And we should be clear when mentioning the term seniors at Virginia. And this is not like first year, second year, blah, blah, blah. Because if you want to get to that point, you're talking like 6th year, 7th year guys. Virginia's got a couple of those on this past year's roster, in addition to graduate players. But in particular, the joy that Tony Elliott expressed, again, making it not about himself, but about somebody else, where he's had ample opportunity to poo-poo people like us here in the fast lane, to look down upon those that have criticized the lack of success at the University of Virginia. And yes, let's call a spade a spade. A lot of the product of this has been a relatively easy schedule that did not feature games against Miami, did not feature games against SMU, did not feature a game against Georgia Tech. There are a lot of teams in the ACC, like the whole ACC championship, which we will get to later this week, and you can hear as part of our quadruple header if you include Virginia Tech men's basketball. But our quadruple header of games this weekend on VTRN Sports. In spite of all of that, the cap of our quadruple header this Saturday is going to be Virginia and Duke. All of that, which we'll get to. it still is the idea of making it about something other than yourself. And Tony Elliott specifically singling out not just the upperclassmen, but the ones who stuck around long enough, or as he likes to call them, somewhat jokingly, forefathers.
It's so awesome when you get to see quote unquote forefathers. That's what I call Clary, and I call them that in the locker room. Yeah, they're the forefathers of the program, but a lot of times they don't get to see, right, the promised land, right? They envision it. They see the vision, but they never get to experience. So to see Josie and Ja and Bracy, and I even count the guys that came in, that were committed to the previous staff. So just a confirmation that they made the right decision to stay when the easy thing would have been to leave and to go somewhere else and try to find quote unquote greener grass. But now they're getting to experience the green grass at least this season.
Look, again, kudos to Carla Williams, whom we've criticized often in the fast lane, because there is an element of society that's more prevalent than ever. We're seeing it at Liberty University. We'll get into the whole Jamie CWall of it all at another time, because I don't want to get too sidetracked and have to play the take a detour sound effect here in the fast lane. But the idea of patience is thinner and thinner. And I get it. When players are being paid, unlike the way they used to, where it was just under the table, legitimate payments to players. When coaches are making millions of dollars, patience is thinner. And frankly, I believe to a certain extent, it should be thinner than it used to be. But in spite of all that, Virginia has done a good job of handling it and trying to balance that and at least making an effort. Meanwhile, there's the Southeastern Conference, TJ, which is, it's the reality of realities. I thought legitimately we were going to get to reenact this moment on Saturday night into Sunday, where we learned that the SEC and CAA, the agency that represents a chunk of the SEC coaches, the others are represented by the former CAA agent, Dowdle is his name, Clint Dowdle. But it's Sexton and Dowdle. But basically, their marketing arm for their agency. I thought for sure we were going to get a reenactment of this.
The answer to the question everybody wants to know. What's your decision?
In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to
Baton Rouge. I thought we were going to get the reenactment of Lane Kiffin doing something like that. For somebody that drugged this out, and again, it's the antithesis of the weekend for Tony Elliott, making it literally his success all about himself. And look, first of all, I've said this before about Hugh Freeze and his past transgressions and other people in theirs. I don't pretend to know anybody's relationship with Jesus Christ, God, if you're of a different faith, Muslim, Judaism, LDS, something else that I forgot to mention because I can't cover them all. I can't pretend to know everybody's relationship on that level. But I can understand why people are more skeptical of that when you hear something like this, as Lane Kiffin said to Marty Smith on the tarmac, getting ready to leave Oxford, to a chorus of words we can't repeat here in the fast lane and gestures that we are not going to be showing at VTRN Sports and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook Live and YouTube.
It just became time, I talked to God and he told me it's time to take a new step. It's a new chapter.
I talked to God and he told me it's time to take a new step and a new chapter. Again, maybe Marty Smith, Marty for sure. Maybe Lane Kiffin legitimately put a lot of prayer into this. But where I can understand the brushback of it is there are other ways to handle this. I don't begrudge the coach himself for taking the gig at LSU. Like, if you're just to put a blindfold and list the top college football jobs in the modern era, let's be reasonable here. Navigable academic standards. I'll be politically correct about this. Code for, if you want to get a degree that's challenging, you can. If you need to keep someone eligible, there's a path for that as well. General studies major, if you will. LSU is in that camp. No offense to my former pastor, God rest his soul, Father Chris, and our interim pastor, Father Ken. But it's St. John's Episcopal Church, Lynchburg, LSU guys. But there are navigable ways down there. I've been tied in. I've got plenty of family friends from decades who are tied into that. And not saying it's not that way at Ole Miss. But in terms of desirable jobs, if you just roll them out, I think you could argue LSU, Ohio State's the other one I would say, that are the most desirable jobs in terms of fertile recruiting bases. That's where I knock Oregon out. The access to that, no competition in state for those fertile recruiting bases. Oregon checks a lot of those boxes, but Oregon is kind of a bit of a ways away. Unlike LSU, talent-rich state, and Ohio, also talent-rich state. And there's no real Power 5 challenger. Maybe you put Georgia in that category, although Georgia Tech has gotten better. It showed it on the field this past Friday, 1 touchdown game. But really, historically, Georgia's owned that state. But LSU, literally, there's no Power 5 challenger in that state. I guess you could put Cincinnati and Ohio State in that if you want to kind of stretch it, because Cincy's new to the category. But LSU's one of the most desirable jobs in college football. I get it why Lane Kiffin would take it. But there are a couple ways to handle this. Number one, hey, if you really, really want me, you're going to have to wait until after the season. I get it messes things up with recruiting, but let's not kid ourselves. We have money. I can give you a general manager in place, but I'm not giving you an answer, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, till after the season. There are ways around that. Lane Kiffin didn't do any of that. And I have no issue with the whole idea of we're not going to let him coach the bowl game. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. But from a business standpoint, Lane Kiffin actually makes sense in this one regard.
When I spoke at my dad's funeral, he moved 17 times. And I realized when all the people, I got all the letters, calls, people showed up from around all those different spots, NC State, all the different spots he coached. And they said he was able to impact them and how much that meant to them. And so I've really strived since that day to really try to impact people and help people through life, through my journey. So just prayed a lot and made a family decision and, hopefully get a chance to go, impact a whole new set of people.
I mean, looking back on other people, sure. But the whole I prayed and impacted, look, everybody kind of gets the idea that it's a better place to win. You're getting a 7-year contract, $91 million, whatever it is, averages out to $13 million a year. To the point where Lane Kiffin's agent, Jimmy Sexton, has a clause in there that Lane Kiffin will get bonuses based on his prior school and team and how they perform in the college football playoff. They win more games and make it further. LSU has to pay Lane Kiffin. You want to talk about how the inmates running the asylum, if you will, where the coaches and their agencies are literally dictating terms to people in academia, or in this case, it's politics because the governor of Louisiana is involved in this. Again, I've talked about it before. Virginia, you can't bet on schools in Virginia, but you can bet on schools in West Virginia if you're in West Virginia, or North Carolina if you're in North Carolina. And it doesn't make sense. It's just what elected officials know. Again, not leaders, elected officials. They don't know a thing about this. They literally got taken to the woodshed. And I don't blame Lane Kiffin for going after that. But there are parts where I get why people just go, this is way too hollow and way too ridiculous and all about Lane Kiffin for anyone else. Like the idea that somehow Oxford was a special place.
It was really difficult. This has been a really special place. 6 years here. I know that there's a lot of feelings and emotions right now around. I hope when they settle down that there's an appreciation about what we were able to do here and having, the best run that's ever been done in the history of the school, and brought some exciting times. So I'm so appreciative to the people of Oxford and the relationships that I developed here.
I'm so appreciative that I hung them out to dry by not coaching them in the college football playoff for which I qualified.
And threatened to poach their players to take them with them at that moment.
Oh my God, don't even get me started on the absurdity of that. Lane Kiffin, if you don't let me coach in the playoffs, then I'm going to raid you. Oh, what, because you wouldn't do it anyway? Like, literally, do we honestly think that Lane Kiffin did not spend a good chunk of the week lining up his coaching staff so that they get on the plane with him to Baton Rouge? Otherwise, if they didn't, they weren't going to have a job. He denied that, but I don't know how much you really believe that, or if it's more word salading people to death, being coached up again by Jimmy Sexton. But there's that element to this. You had so many great relationships that you hung them out to dry, right? Sounds like a winning relationship. Honey, I loved our time together, but I'm really ready to move on to the next shiny spouse.
And I'm taking the kids.
Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, I've heard that analogy, but it's not inappropriate. I want to spend Christmas as one happy family, but after Christmas, we're moving out of the house, and I'm taking the kids, and I'm moving in with my next significant other. Really? And not to mention the idea that somehow this has all been real challenging. Cry me a river, Lane Kiffin.
That this was a very challenging, difficult day. We went through a lot last night with Keith Carter, trying to figure out a way, to make this playoff, run work and be able to coach the team. And at the end of the day, that's his decision. And I totally respect that. I understand that decision. And, so I just totally wish the team the best of luck, wish that I was coaching, but understand that it was a very challenging position for him and the chancellor to be in, and totally respect that. So, just really hope they play really well and go win the national championship.
Of course he hopes they play really well. The details have come out that if Lane Kiffin's former team wins the national title, LSU has to pay him a bonus of $1 million or so. Well, guess what? I'd be rooting for my former team if I got to get paid $1 million by my new team for the success that has no correlation to what I'm about to do in my current job. Like, this is literally the antithesis of a weekend from Virginia. Virginia beats their rival the second time in 20 plus years. And Tony Elliott makes it about everything else. Not himself, but everything else. When he's had a chance to beat his chest. Meanwhile, there's Lane Kiffin, and it literally is all about me. To the point where I think the best thing I heard about this was a discussion. Bill Cowher kicked it off on the NFL Today, the NFL show. And I mean, this is why we're discussing today, because everybody's discussed this Lane Kiffin to LSU. It literally transcends sports to the point where I think a lot of it's because it highlights what people are frustrated with when it comes to, I will call it modern collegiate athletics. That term, because it's pay for play. But Nate Burleson had this to say, and then the interjection from the ever-wise friend of the fast lane, James Brown.
I've heard from college players say, how can a school ask me to be loyal to the program if the coaching staff isn't?
Yeah.
And I simply answer it by saying they can't. They can ask you to be loyal if your coaches aren't.
It rings hollow. It's been ringing hollow for a long time.
It exactly has. James Brown summing it all up. Everything you hear is it rings hollow. I don't think Lane Kiffin's off base. The distraction piece for Ole Miss probably wasn't there because a lot of these kids care about it. But there's so many tentacles to this that should be brought up. First of all, and this is not going to happen. Like, it will not, but it should. Ole Miss should be downgraded in the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's eyes. When a good chunk of their offensive staff are leaving, and you have a new defensive coach who's being elevated to his role for the first time ever as head coach. And I get there's an initial, stick it to him mantra. But is that really as big of a deal when some of these players are probably going to follow Lane Kiffin anyway, when he's probably spent the last week talking to them? Do you honestly think he is not or has? So they should be downgraded. But the new College Football Playoff executive director outside of Rich Clark, among the members of the committee itself, is an SEC guy, Hunter Yurosich. Guess what? Guess who the biggest stakeholder is for the College Football Playoff from a TV rights standpoint? ESPN. Have we not seen how College Game Day has, I will call this, devolved from a show that I think used to be the best pregame show in all of sports to one where it looks more like it's a marketing arm for the SEC and certainly for Jimmy Sexton as a mouthpiece for him. And I'm not saying that Sexton told Herb Street, although I don't believe the Herb Street idea of, well, they should allow Lane Kiffin to coach. Like, some of the things Herb Street has said recently really do scream like a guy that has flipped from being a legitimate opinionator to somebody who is trying to protect his positions as the Thursday Night Football analyst on Prime, as the big college football announcer for ESPN's big games. Like, kind of turn off to me in a lot of his coverage. I get it. There are plenty of people that love the guy to death, think he speaks the gospel. I don't quite know. I do not look at him in that regard. And that to me is another sad element to this. But because of the protective nature of ESPN and the SEC, I think there's no way, shape, or form that Ole Miss is going to get downgraded out of the playoff. Because let's be real here. If you took Ole Miss, you're taking them on what they are now, not the team that just went 10-2 in the regular season and won 38-19 in the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State. We got to apply the same logic. Remember Florida State. And I know we had 2 games, but we saw Florida State without Jordan Travis at quarterback and how different of a team they were. And then they didn't make the college football playoff because we're grading them as a different team, not the one we saw for the majority of the year, but the one we think can't do damage in the playoff. Don't you kind of have to have the same attitude to Ole Miss? Like, I get they're similar pieces, but a lot of the coaching staff's already been rated. How many players are mentally checking out, especially if you're dealing with nagging injuries? You're going to kind of mail it in to make sure you don't get hurt. So you got a spot down in Baton Rouge. Like, that to me is the other bothersome part. It's not going to matter because the SEC and ESPN are going to protect Ole Miss, but at least should be given some consideration.
You also got to consider, will Ole Miss be petty and purposely lose in the playoffs to keep Kiffin from getting that bonus?
I don't think they will because they're not having to pay the bonus themselves. And as a school, you still want to do the best you can.
Right.
And you still want to show out as a school for your new head coach and give him the best opportunity to succeed. And yes, Ole Miss, I mean, look, the other takeaway to this is I get the words ring hollow, but what Ole Miss is getting from this whole situation with Lane Kiffin, it's like the guy or the girl who is the affair enabler. Yeah, you're kind of sleeping with somebody who's already married, but they claim they love you a lot. And eventually they leave that spouse to be with you full time. Then how are you going to be shocked when they leave you for the next shiny object? Because that's kind of who Lane Kiffin is. Like, I'm not going to use the whole turn a you-know-what into a housewife analogy that reporter used. I don't think he's wrong. I don't blame the guy at all. He kind of did it with the idea that Kiffin's out the door anyway, so what do I have to lose by going after him? And it's not wrong. He's probably never going to have to interact with Lane Kiffin again. So he's not wrong in that. The fact that he's kind of baby-faced hurts. Like, apparently the guy's in his mid to upper 30s, and yet he looks like he's just out of college because he's baby-faced. Look, full disclosure, as somebody who's baby-faced, I kind of am. Grow your hair out and grow some facial hair, and it'll make you look older. I know you're doing the trick as well, TJ, with the facial hair too. Adds a little legitimacy. Baby-faced Ben should kind of take after us.
Right.
But he's not wrong. But let's also keep it real here. If you're taking one thing away, when somebody leaves their significant other to be with you,
right,
do not be surprised when they leave you for the next shiny object. It don't work like that.
Yeah.
It don't work like relationships kind of parallel here. These type of people kind of do the same thing. So keep that in mind. All right, we're way overdue for covering the Commonwealth. Shane Mettlen, JMU, big news today. Jerry Ratcliffe, big weekend for the Who's. CWall, somehow surviving, present in the press box for the overtime thriller last night, that you heard on the VTR and Sports app. And then after all that, David Cunnigham of TextSideline.com on the Hokies. They lost on the field, but appear to be winning it off. All that still to come here in the Fast Lane. Keep your feedback coming. We've had a lot of great feedback on Lane Kiffin, to which we will get later in the week. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and VTR and Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube.
It's the final countdown to savings during the Red Tag year-end sales event at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Holiday savings have started, and this is your last chance to save. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Stop the search. Head to the Motor Mile for over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from, and a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you choices more than any other dealer in the area. Sheeler owns the finance company. We make it easy to buy with in-house financing. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. 11 new car brands, over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. Our biggest sale of the year is here. The Red Tag year-end sales event at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com. But hurry, this sale ends when the new year begins.
Hi, Danny from Gibbons Books Little Dickens. We believe in reading and play and in shopping locally for stronger communities. 3 times more jobs are created by local businesses versus online sales. This holiday season, live local and shop local for a better Central Virginia.
Hey, this is Jake with Western Ways in Forest. Shop our thousands of pairs of boots in store with personalized customer service and excellent pricing. Shop Western Ways this holiday season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's from our family to yours.
Want an outdoor oasis? The Concrete Wizard can restore and revitalize your pool deck or patio. After the Concrete Wizard works some magic, your old, tired concrete will look new again. For pool decks, the Concrete Wizard can install a safe, innovative rubber surfacing option that's slip-resistant, soft, and easy on the feet. A great choice for families and anyone concerned about safety. Visit theconcretewizard.com for some ideas, then contact them today for a free consultation to create your perfect outdoor oasis.
Hi, this is Bill Roth, voice of Virginia Tech football. It's time to start jumping. This is your home for the Hokies, VTRN Sports 93.3 FM and the VTRN Sports app. Hi, this is Bill Roth, voice of Virginia Tech football. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Did he get sextoned? We are going to create a verb today here in the Fast Lane as we begin.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
Shane Mettlen of DNRonline.com and at Shane_DNR Sports. Shane, great to be speaking with you. right after you, Katie Harper, and the rest of the media up in Harrisonburg got finished speaking with Bob Chesney, the news then came out conveniently from Pete Thamel of ESPN, who seems to always be breaking news related to Jimmy Sexton clients, that Bob Chesney is basically all but going to UCLA, but has not officially signed the contract and will not until after the Sun Belt Conference Championship game this weekend. Did y'all get Sexton? We're creating a verb for you today in the fast lane where Chesney knew that this was basically done, but wanted his agent to not leak it until after the press conference so he didn't have to be bombarded today by the questions.
Probably, but if the timing was unbelievable, if it was really orchestrated that way, because I mean, he was like the door had barely latched before like people were picking up their phones and showing them to each other in the room. So I don't know if I'm almost wondering if maybe it got out from the UCLA side as they wanted to let everybody know that they've wrapped this up. With people getting a little antsy there, but regardless, as soon as that Chesney portion of the press conference ended, there were still players to talk to. We had a completely different storyline we were working on.
Yes, we did. All of a sudden, everything has changed from JMU. The news itself, I think most people thought there was a good chance Bob Chesney would leave for another opportunity. UCLA, though, we haven't heard Chesney speak on this. Is it more just, this is what happens? It's kind of like Scott Boras in baseball, Jimmy Sexton in football. When you sign up with him, you know that he's going to give you to the highest bidder, but you kind of have to go regardless. Because UCLA, to me, am I wrong? Doesn't seem like the most desirable job amongst the Power 4 jobs that could even have been available if Sexton just waited another year.
Well, this is a lesson I feel like I learned 2 years ago with Curt Cignetti going to Indiana. Is at the time I was like, Indiana, like I would have expected him to go someplace where he could win right away. Like I couldn't believe it was Indiana of all places. I think we don't know how good jobs are unless, you're one of the people fortunate enough to be kind of involved in the interview process right now. We used to always know, Oklahoma is a great job. I don't know how that compares to, other schools at this point when it comes to what the resources are going to be, how much boosters are going to kick in for NIL, like how you're doing with revenue sharing and facility. I think, we just don't know what the good jobs are right now. I would trust that Bob Chesney's picking a place where he believes he can win right away, because I don't see him being a guy who just takes a paycheck to take a paycheck. I think if he's choosing UCLA out of the openings, that he probably is hearing good things about what they're going to do with their program.
We've discussed this before, but the non-distraction element of this, we'll get to it in a moment for Troy in the conference championship game this coming weekend. But this past weekend at Coastal Carolina. All right, I got to get my confession on for just a second.
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
What in the world was that halftime ceremony with the Revolutionary War reenactment down at Coastal? Did you see that? And were you thinking the same thing I was?
I didn't see it in person. I went to actually cover JMU basketball. I went the opposite direction, but yeah, it was interesting. The people who saw it in person had a good time, though. So I guess, they entertain the crowd, which is all you're trying to do.
I mean, I guess it is. And this is Myrtle Beach, after all. We like to affectionately call it. These are our words, Shane, not yours. We call it the Redneck Riviera. So from that,
I may have used that term in the past as well.
Everybody's allowed to get their usher on. Apparently, Shane is doing the same thing that we did today.
After Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the fast lane.
Yes, back on the road from the unnecessary detour on the Revolutionary War halftime show for JMU at Coastal this past weekend. Emphasis on at Coastal. JMU, Sun Belt Championship game. Is this a distraction? Or in this day and age where, heck, a chunk of the JMU players could follow Chesney, much like they did when it was obvious that that Cignetti was going to leave for Indiana, do players handle this distraction much differently now than they used to? And JMU could reasonably be expected to win this game and maybe now have an outside chance to make the college football playoff as well.
Yeah, I think it is potentially less of a distraction than it was, even 3, 4, 5 years ago. Like, coaches didn't want to talk about it. I think they wanted to avoid that topic in the locker room. I think, players then start wondering, am I being lied to? Am I being misled? I think, we've seen it happen here recently. I don't know how exactly Lane Kiffin handled it or people like that. But I mean, even in the Sun Belt last year, Charles Huff was very open with his players that he didn't know what his future at Marshall was, but he wanted to finish this season and do it in a big way. And they did. And, I feel like that's what coaches have got to do. And that's the vibe I'm picking up from JMU right now, is that and that's what some of the reports are too, is that he told the team, he told them what he was doing. And basically they're like, now, yeah, let's go out and finish the job that we started and we'll see where we all end up next year. But that's kind of the nature of college sports, because players can move too. I think before free transfers, you're wondering what your coach is going to do. You're wondering if you're going to be stuck at a place where you wouldn't have wanted to be without your coach. And I think it's just a completely different situation now if the coaches handle it the right way and are just honest with their players in the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, if you're not, that's where it becomes a distraction, or if you just create it to be one like Lane Kiffin, who has the week-long reality show.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, that's part of the reason, as a media member, we want them to be straightforward with us too, but they have no obligation to do it with us. I feel like they do have some obligation to do it with their players and their bosses and everyone else. And I feel like that's probably the way it's gone at JMU this year.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable assessment. Replacements, options, and all that we'll get to at another time. Shane, thank you for yours today here in the Fast Lane.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Shane Mettlen with us here talking JMU Dukes.
Now to the Virginia Cavaliers.
Jerry Ratcliffe, the person with whom we had the privilege of speaking this past weekend. We'll see if we've got him on right now or if we need to give him a call. Hootie, do we have you?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm so glad. TJ is even more relieved than I am. Virginia, they win 27-7 over Virginia Tech. Is it just me, or did it feel like that game could have been a much bigger blowout if Tony Elliott and company really felt like running the score up on the Hokies?
I'm sure they could have scored at least one more touchdown, and Tony's just not that kind of guy. I don't think he likes running up on people like some other schools do, but I think it could have been, and it probably should have been. They had a couple other opportunities that they kind of flubbed up, I guess. But I think the margin should have been wider than what it was.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got the impression pretty early that Virginia Tech's offense, especially the passing game, was virtually non-existent, and there was not really going to be a chance that much of anything happened out of that. The one injury, of course, it was Noah Josie that we put the stuff up at Fastlane Edlane on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, not Mikhail Boley, who suffered the injury. Is that the one dour note from this that concerns the Virginia Cavalier fans?
Yeah, I think so. He's a key cog in that offensive line, being the guy that has the quarterback's blind side, and he's very experienced and very good talent over there at left tackle. And they were kind of sketchy on what the extent of his injury might be after the game. They said that they were going to need more X-rays once the swelling went down. So we may find out something tomorrow. We're supposed to talk to some of the players and the two coordinators tomorrow.
We'll get more of an update on the injury to Mikhail Boley, as you mentioned a moment ago early in the week. Outside of that, is cathartic the right way to describe this, where Virginia fans, for the first time at any point in the last 2 decades, because 2019 was in a good way for Virginia, but a more dramatic victory with Bryce Perkins and company leading the way. Was this somewhat cathartic where it became pretty obvious early on, Hootie, that Virginia Tech just wasn't going to do enough offensively to keep up, and Virginia fans, for once in a couple of decades, could relax and start to take in the thrill of this victory?
I'm sure it was nice for them not to have to sweat one out to the last second of the game. But yeah, you were right. I mean, they knew that if they could contain drones, that was going to essentially force him to throw the ball. And Tech was kind of stubborn. They still stuck with the running game, even when they were trailing by 20 points or more. And they just simply can't throw the ball. And that's a huge handicap. They were a one-dimensional offense, and Virginia took a lot of advantage of that. I think they knew that going in, and they tried to make that happen. And Virginia's defense is playing lights out. I mean, they shut down Duke like nobody has all season 15 days ago, and then shut down the number 2 rushing offense in the ACC to practically nothing. I think this defense is peaking at the right time. They're playing really good football.
What does it say about Tony Elliott on a weekend where Lane Kiffin was in the news for all the wrong reasons of egotistical coaching, that Tony Elliott immediately after the game opening statement was, basically dedicating the victory to the families of Devin Chandler, Deshaun Perry, and Lavelle Davis Jr. as their killer was sentenced to 5 life sentences during the time between the Duke game and the Virginia Tech game. And then after that, it was dedicating it to the forefathers, the as he called them, the multi-year players at UVA who stuck around to build this. What does it say about Tony Elliott through all the challenges he's endured? And yes, the black eyes at times on Virginia football, and now they've been run from an operational standpoint. The personality, it's hard not to like Tony Elliott from that angle.
Oh, absolutely. We knew all along he was a really good guy, and he's a very conscientious guy. He's very thoughtful and respectful. I know he went to at least one day, if not several days, of the sentencing hearing last week, and a lot of the families were there and relatives, etc. I mean, he's never let. He promised Virginia fans and the families that he would never let the Virginia fan base forget about those kids, and he's done a good job. I've been very mindful of that ever since it happened. I wasn't surprised at all that he sort of dedicated the whole season and all this to those kids that were slain by an insane guy, apparently. And then the forefathers, a few of those kids who've been good enough to transfer somewhere else and probably get a nice payday, have stuck with Virginia through the bad times, and they believed that they could turn things around. And I don't know if that would have happened had it not been for the huge influx of money that came in, but in those guys' minds, they were going to stick it out no matter what happened, and they deserve a lot of accolades.
We have seen so much of that. We've seen it from JerryRatcliffe.com, the great analysis. Hootie, thank you for dropping some of it for us today here in the Fast Lane.
Glad to be with you, Ed. See you soon.
Indeed, Jerry Ratcliffe with us in the Fast Lane.
Now to, just for you haters, left hand up the Commanders.
Of course, when left hands are up, you could also refer to the Dennver Broncos defense getting the left hand up and knocking away the pass in overtime that could have gotten the Commanders a 28-27 victory. Instead, it was a 27-26 defeat at the hands of the Dennver Broncos that you heard on your home for the best play-by-play, including Monday Night Football tonight, the VTRN Sports app. CWall with us in the Fast Lane. Candy Waller present in the press box once again last night. CWall, we pray that you enjoyed your time off during the bye week. For the Washington Commanders, they didn't win. I know you don't celebrate moral victories in the NFL, but is this something that the Commanders can at least build upon, knowing that they could have thrown the towel in, given that it's basically a non-playoff year, and instead they're at least showing a level of fight?
Absolutely. I think last night, I've heard so many fans talk about what they have for next year and all the things. And I'm like, you saw it last night. You saw some of that last night. We saw a bit of Washington Commanders that everybody watched all last season, and kind of the Washington Commanders that we haven't yet been able to really see so far this season. Yes, the season, they won't have a winning record at all this season, but you got to say it was awfully fun for a moment there to watch, see that fight in that Washington Commanders team.
Well, how important is this also? Obviously, there's the phrase of everybody's auditioning for jobs, but there's a dichotomy of veteran players in this roster, but there are a lot of young players that are really trying to show that they can step up, and Washington seemed to at least put that together last night.
Can you repeat? I think I lost you.
Yeah, we had a technical challenge with Candy Waller of Bowie TV Sports, who's with us in the Fast Lane. How important was it for the Commanders, and what did you see particularly out of the younger players who stepped up last night at a time where they're auditioning to determine whether they should have the expanded roles or whether the Commanders need to add more pieces that might take or reduce their jobs?
I mean, you might have to look at, some some expanded roles and all of that. We also got to remember when it comes to the Washington, if I caught everything correctly, Ed, and forgive me if not, because my phone was going in and out there, but still quite a few injuries on with the Washington Commanders. And while they did get some pieces back, they don't have every single piece. And one of the areas that they're completely deficient in is their pass rush. Much of their pass rush is still on IR and will be on IR for the remainder of the season. So still some work there that needs to be done, and potentially some new pieces as well as expanded roles, but it remains to be seen.
We'll wrap it up with you on this, Candy. Bend but don't break. Is that a reasonable approach for the Commanders to take in terms of their defensive approach, given the volume of players that are injured and the possibility, probably more likely now that they lost once again, that they won't be coming back this season?
I mean, absolutely. Bend but don't break, but it's still finding that balance of bend, don't break, but win the football game. Because at nothing else, hey, at least you can mess up a few other people's days. You know what I mean? If you can't have the season that you wanted to in the end. But they're definitely displayed that bend, don't break. They just didn't come out with the W, and so they got to figure out what still needs to be done so that they come out with that W.
Yes, indeed. Candy Waller, a W every time she brings her insight, as she's always present in the press box for Bowie TV Sports. CWall, thank you for your time today in the fast lane and braving those technical challenges.
Yes, thank you so much. Talk to you guys soon.
We will. Candy Waller with us here in the fast lane. When we return, we will pivot off of that and talk Virginia Tech. New coach, new staff, but new result, not the kind they want in Charlottesville, and more losses for basketball. All of that's still to come with David Cunnigham of TechSideline.com next here in the fast lane.
Hey folks, Mark Dalton here with Terry Subaru. It's that time of year again for the Subaru Share the Love event. That's when we donate $325 for every new Subaru we sell from now through January 2nd. This donation goes to 5 well-deserving charities like Meals on Wheels, the ASPCA, the National Parks Foundation, Make-A-Wish, or our local charity, the Lynchburg Humane Society. So come take advantage of some fantastic year-end deals at Terry Subaru and help us share the love.
Hey, this is Jake with Western Ways in Forest. Shop our thousands of pairs of boots in store with personalized customer service and excellent pricing. Shop Western Ways this holiday season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's from our family to yours.
Hi, Danny from Gibbons Books Little Dickens. We believe in reading and play and in shopping locally for stronger communities. 3 times more jobs are created by local businesses versus online sales. This holiday season, live local and shop local for a better Central Virginia.
Sushi and sake. It's a fun blend. Come experience new Yamada of Forest Sushi and Sake, the same fresh sushi you've come to expect, complemented by our new Asian fusion menu, highlighting the freshest filet mignon, plus pork belly and chicken, and grilled seafood like lobster, scallop, shrimp, tuna, and lobster with an Asian flair. Your meat is grilled and prepared to perfection every time, and our crab rangoon is the perfect start to every meal. Come experience new Yamada of Forest Sushi and Sake, 205 Bristol Mill Drive, in Forest behind the Graves Mill Center.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
As the decorations go up and the lights twinkle brightly, we at Brownstone Properties hope this special time is filled with the warmth of family, cherished moments, and heartfelt connections. From our family to yours, may your home be a haven of joy, laughter, and lifelong memories. And let us not forget those who may be in need with our generosity and compassion this holiday season. Happy holidays from all of us at Brownstone Properties, where home is at the heart of everything we do.
VTR and Sports, powered by ESPN Radio. Plenty of NFL action this week, starting on Thanksgiving at noon with Packers at Lions, Chiefs at Cowboys, then some Hokies basketball, and the nightcap, Bengals at Ravens. A Black Friday special starts at 2:30 as the Bears take on the Eagles. Then Sunday at 12:30, a tripleheader. Rams at Panthers, Bills at Steelers, and Broncos at Commanders. And don't forget, Monday Night Football, Giants at Patriots. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. VTRN Sports, powered by ESPN Radio. The games play here, 93.3 FM, 1320 AM, and on the VTRN Sports app.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Well, we'll get the bad out of the way first as we go into part 2 of
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Virginia Tech Hokies.
with David Cunnigham of TechSideline.com. David, first of all, Virginia Tech women's basketball, Virginia Tech men's basketball, both losses. They bounced back, but losses over the weekend, including back-to-back for Virginia Tech men's basketball. What's your level of concern with Virginia Tech basketball heading into the December months, including the big SEC ACC challenge this weekend? And we'll try to get David Cunnigham of there we go. Try it again. David Cunnigham of TechSideline.com with us once again here in the Fast Lane. David, great to be speaking with you. Losses for Virginia Tech women's basketball. They bounce back 2 in a row for men's basketball. Clustering them together so we can get to football in a moment. What is your level of concern now with Virginia Tech basketball heading into this weekend's ACC SEC challenge games that you'll be able to hear Tuesday and Thursday right here on VTRN Sports?
They've got George Mason on Saturday. Meanwhile, the women, they've got Duke on Sunday in their ACC opener. Before that, they've got a really good Florida team on Thursday. You put all that together, and they've got to win games very quickly. I'm not too concerned, simply because I think for the men, they were missing Toby Lowell. You get him back, you've got a complete team. I think you'll be all right. But for the women, I think their bounce-back win against Oregon State was huge. They really needed that. I think they needed to see the ball go in the basket. They hadn't shot the ball well yet. That was their first game shooting the ball very well all season. They needed that to continue. But, yeah, I mean, a little bit concerning for both teams. The women had lost back-to-back to JMU and BYU, and the men lost to St. Mary's and VCU. All good teams, but at the same time, if you want to make the NCAA tournament, you have to build up some of these resume wins early in the season. They have not done that yet. They will have the opportunity to do so. This week, Ed, I'm circling that game against George Mason on Saturday for the men in Castro Coliseum. That is a huge game. George Mason is around 50 in the net rankings right now. That could be a big-time win for the Hokies at home if they get it. Especially, I think they'll have Toby Lowell back. So I expect good things from Virginia Tech men's basketball, but certainly when you go down to a tournament like the Bahamas and only come away with one win in 3 days, yeah, I think there's a little bit of cause for concern, but had Toby Lowell played, I think it would have been slightly different.
That's a good point about Virginia Tech men's basketball. Women's basketball as well. There are opportunities to pick up those marquee victories. Women maybe more so, but both of them SEC, ACC Challenge. Men tomorrow, 6:30 airtime at South Carolina, VTRN Sports app. And we have no show Thursday because the women take on Florida, 4:30 airtime as well on the VTRN Sports app. And then the George Mason game right after the Big 12 football championship on our quadruple header Saturday on VTRN Sports. Back to football, though, itself, or ready to football with you, David. Virginia Tech, they lose at Virginia this Saturday. For the bigger picture sake of the rivalry, does this add something where even Virginia Tech fans can acknowledge it might be better for the rivalry because Virginia finally gets a victory in a year where there's really no excuse for them not to have gotten a victory, especially given, well, we kind of saw the Virginia Tech offense explain why Virginia Tech really didn't stand a chance in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you look at this game, Ed, the Hokies really did not really have a chance to win. Like, they're not a very good team. They haven't played well for the majority of the season. They were able to string together some stops defensively. But offensively, I mean, they had 7 consecutive 3-and-out. That is a record for a single game in a row, dating back to 1987. 7 in a row. And they only had 4 completions. One of those was a 57-yard touchdown on Tech's last offensive play of the game from Kyron Jones to Snook Peterkin to save the scoring streak of all things. But yeah, Ed, I think that's a good point. And I've thought about that too. This is a rivalry that Virginia Tech had won 19 of the last 20 games. That's not much of a rivalry. You look at the Virginia Tech-Virginia men's basketball rivalry, that's a little bit different. The Hokies and Cavaliers have traded blows over the years, specifically between Buzz Williams and Mike Young versus Tony Bennett for a really long time. And that was back and forth. UVA often had the upper hand, but I think a lot of people felt like it was pretty balanced. And you go into most games, and yes, UVA might be a little bit favored, but either team could win. Often, the Hokies did win in Castle Coliseum, while UVA won in JPJ. Last year was the first time the Hokies had won in JPJ in a very long time. I think you need that kind of balance in football. Maybe not, Virginia Tech fans might not like hearing that, but I think having both schools invested heavily is great, not only for that rivalry, but for the Commonwealth of Virginia, for high school football in the region, for getting local talent to stay home. It's going to be very interesting over the next couple of days, Ed, what kind of in-state talent stays home and commits to the Hokies before signing day. But as far as the rivalry goes, UVA has invested so much. Virginia Tech has invested so much. And both of that has come in the last year. If you can get these two programs to do that on a year-in, year-out basis, your rivalry will be better for it. Can you imagine, Ed, if that game on Saturday night at 7 o'clock on ESPN, it was for the winner goes to the ACC Championship game? I mean, they've had Coastal Division or games for the Coastal Division title in the past. But if the Hokies can kind of lift up their end of the bargain, and it seems like they will under James Franklin, if Tony Elliott and Virginia can keep that program rolling, you might see some very intense, very meaningful rivalry games in the future. Now, who knows if it's still lopsided, but the more meaningful the games, the better for everybody, for the ACC, for the Commonwealth, for everybody in it, everybody that wants to watch on TV. And we haven't really had any meaningful games in a very long time. The last one was probably 2019 when UVA and VT both were playing for an opportunity to go to the ACC Championship game. UVA won that. Before that, you have to go way back. I think this is a step in the right direction for the rivalry, even though the Hokies are on the short end of the stick.
David, after seeing Duke make it because of the ACC's convoluted tiebreakers, and there are a bunch of teams that could have also gotten in if it was a better tiebreaker for the ACC. SMU made it last year. Am I nuts to be the guy that, again, I won't do it in Virginia because you technically can't, but I may be traveling out of state at certain points, that when I travel out of state go, Virginia Tech, if they're a long shot to win the ACC and make the college football playoff, might be worth a couple of shekels in football because of the state of this conference and James Franklin's ability to upgrade the talent, as we're already seeing with the high school players, not to mention players that may well flip to Virginia Tech from the portal coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you're crazy at all. I think this league is wide open, Ed. I mean, Duke won a 5-way tiebreaker to get into the ACC Championship game. I think Miami is probably the best team in the league. Has the best talent for sure, beat Notre Dame this season, but the Hurricanes probably won't be in the college football playoff just because of the way things have gone. But I think that is just even more certainty that if you're James Franklin, if you're a Virginia Tech fan, you look at the ACC and go, it's there for the taking. It's not like there's Clemson running it like it did in the last decade. It's not like Florida State is running it like it did once upon a time. Miami has been hit or miss. So Miami is good, don't get me wrong. But the Hokies hung around with Miami this year, and it was a pretty bad team this year for the Hokies, right? I look at this league, Ed, and I go, man, it is anyone's game. And if James Franklin can come in, and I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but if he can come in and continue to land talent and bring in a good staff and develop players, and I'm very curious to see how this next month, 2 months pans out with the transfer portal, with signing day, with assistant coaches coming on board, there is a very good chance they hit the ground running and are competitive and are in that conversation. Maybe next year we're looking at this and there's a 3 or 4-way tiebreaker and the Hokies are one of those teams in the mix. That would be quite the turnaround from where the Hokies were this season when they won 3 games. But I think that's what James Franklin can do. I think that's what Virginia Tech gave him the resources to do. And it would not shock me at all. If I don't know what the odds are, I'd be very curious to see when they come out, sometime in the next couple months. But man, Virginia Tech has a long shot to win the ACC title. I know you can't do it in the Commonwealth, but that would be an interesting bet to place, say, in North Carolina.
We just might be making some trips to any of the surrounding states. Don't get me started on the absurdity. I won't call them leaders if they won't consider how dumb this rule is. Elected officials. You can bet on North Carolina teams in North Carolina, West Virginia teams in West Virginia, but somehow it becomes a danger and immoral to do it in Virginia. Sorry, had to get off my soapbox for a second, David, on W227 BG Timberlake, WVGMA Lynchburg, WMNA, Gretna, Danville, Southside is David Cunnigham of TechSideline.com is with us here in the Fast Lane. David, we kind of touched on it a moment ago, but the acquisition of players, we don't have the transfer portal open officially yet. I'm sure players are already gauging interest if they haven't already for ones that are not going to the conference championship or college football playoff as their seasons are effectively over outside of the glorified bowl game exhibitions. Because of that, how confident are you that Virginia Tech and James Franklin will build on what already has been a very successful last week with all the addition of these high school players, many of whom are just following Franklin from Penn State to the Virginia Tech?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big couple of weeks. It's certainly not over, Ed. I mean, the Hokies have signing day in 2 days, and Chris Coleman, my colleague, and I, we've probably pre-written 10, 12 more articles for guys that it seems like they're going to flip to Virginia Tech or commit to Virginia Tech. And this is going to be a giant signing day class as far as high schoolers are concerned. Some of them might wait it out until the normal signing day in February, but this could be a very busy couple of days. Hokies had 3 today in the last couple of hours. And it would not shock me if come the 7 o'clock hour tonight that there's another commit, because that's the way James Franklin's had this thing rolling so far. What's going to be very curious is once they get this staff in place, they will have about a month or so until the transfer portal opens to kind of figure out, hey, here's who we want to retain. Here's who we want to kind of let go. Hey, here's who we want to go after. Here's what our needs are. Combine the current players on the roster with the incoming freshmen. And then you've got one of the biggest budgets in the league to go after whoever you want in the transfer portal. And that's going to be very curious to see how the Hokies do this, because you know what, Ed? They need a quarterback. You've got to go out and get a quarterback. And we've seen with different programs around the country, whether it's Indiana, whether it's Virginia, whether it's Vanderbilt, if you go out and get a quarterback, it can change your fortune, not just for your team for a season, but for your program for multiple years. And I think the Hokies have a really good opportunity to make a splash in multiple ways, not just at quarterback, but you look around the entire team and there's some talent, but there's also a lot of holes to fill. And I'm going to be very curious to see how James Franklin kind of allocates these funds, if you will, and goes after different guys in the transfer portal when it opens. Because the reality of the situation is we have no idea. We're a month away from the portal opening. We have no idea who's going to be in it, but there's going to be talent in it. I can guarantee you that much. There's going to be talent out there, and the Hokies, I think, are going to be in prime position to go get it because they've got a hot coach in James Franklin who loves to recruit. That's what he does. And if you can go and get some of the best talent in the country, you can immediately turn into a contender in the ACC and potentially nationally.
David, we'll wrap it up on this. I don't pretend to be a legal expert like our friends at trostlaw.com. Granted, they're more for personal injuries and car accidents as opposed to term sheets with college football coaches. Did you see anything on James Franklin's that would make Virginia Tech have to pay him if Penn State wins games in the future, or even for winning their last couple of games of the season, like somehow managed to be pulled off by obviously Jimmy Sexton, same agent, but with Lane Kiffin and what happens if Ole Miss keeps winning, despite Kiffin already being at LSU?
Yeah, I didn't notice anything in his contract about Penn State. And I think that deal was done specifically because they fired him. I think that's kind of language in there. I mean, I do think it's important, though, when you note the salary in the contract, that he's got $9 million of a buyout coming in over the first 3 years of his deal at Virginia Tech. And that's a steal. I mean, you talk about all this going on in college football, where the SEC, 4 new coaching changes were made yesterday, right? And Kentucky made its announcement today. But the Hokies have been working on this thing for 2 weeks. James Franklin's had 2 recruiting weekends, right? Hokies are out in front of the 8 ball. And oh, by the way, they didn't have to pay Franklin $8 million over the first 3 years of his deal because Penn State's covering that, right? The Hokies have a much easier cushion on the front end. Now, it's up to 12 and 13 million in the final fourth and fifth seasons for Franklin's deal. But at that point, you think it's going to be worth it, right? I mean, just think about that perspective on this. How badly the Virginia Tech team needed just a little bit of revive. And Virginia Tech got it in the form of James Franklin. And not only has he hit the ground running, but he's had 2 great recruiting weekends. And Hokies are going to have a haul here come signing day. They're going to have all the resources they need come the transfer portal. And on top of that, their buyout in terms of salary and whatnot, I mean, the deal they put together with James Franklin in terms of his contract is fantastic. And the Hokies don't have to pay $9 million on the front end because of Penn State. Like, that is – Virginia Tech made out like a bandit in this thing, Ed. It's kind of funny because you look around the country and go, okay, Lane Kiffin to LSU. Well, that's probably the only other hire that comes anywhere close to James Franklin to Virginia Tech. Hokies got a sure thing. They got him for a good deal. He's hit the ground running already. I mean, this is about as good as it can get if you're a Virginia Tech fan. And I think it softens the blow a little bit from that Saturday game, that loss in Charlottesville, because I know Virginia Tech fans don't like losing to UVA, but hey, the Hokies are in a good position right now, trust me.
Well, we'll take your word for it, as LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow would want us to do. We will take David Cunningham's word because we know the insight is great at the TSL podcast. To get my usher on, haven't quite listened to the new one that's dropped. It's saving it up for my workout tomorrow morning. But you can also read the articles at techsideline.com. David, thank you as always for your time today here in the Fast Lane.
Much appreciated. Talk to you soon.
David Cunnigham with us here in the Fast Lane. A little bit more for us until we get ready for Monday Night Football. This evening, Patriots at the Giants, VTR and Sports app, and ask that smart speaker open VTR and Sports around the Lynchburg, Virginia area. And of course, 93.3 FM, VTR and Sports powered by ESPN Radio. Now, on to Freddie and Harry, already in progress.
Other teams, how much pressure is on Lane Kiffin in year one at LSU? These aren't the days where you're getting 3-4 years to build a program because